Step back. This elevator isn't for you. Her voice cracked through the marble lobby like glass shattering on stone. The woman in the red blazer lunged forward, one hand flung out, palm stiff, shoving against the chest of a tall black man standing calm before the elevator doors. The stainless steel panels reflected the moment like a mirror of injustice. Her fury, his restraint. For a second, the lobby froze. Phones paused mid-scroll. Pens hung above paper. The receptionist's voice carried too far, too sharp. It wasn't just a rule, it was a judgment. He didn't push back. Both hands rose slowly, level with his shoulders, palms open. Not surrender. Control. His eyes held steady, absorbing the insult like he had heard it before, more times than he cared to count. Behind the desk, a pair of junior staff whispered. One mouthed, "Does she even know who he is?" The other shook their head. They didn't. Not yet. The woman leaned closer, teeth clenched. "You heard me. This elevator is reserved for executives. Move, before I call security." A beat of silence. The hum of fluorescent lights filled the space where dignity should have been. He looked at her badge swaying wildly from her lanyard, then at the half-circle of onlookers gathering behind her. Still, his voice came out steady, low, cutting through the tension like a drumbeat. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Gasps fluttered. A man in a navy suit near the seating area pulled out his phone, red record light blinking. A whisper spread, "He doesn't look like management." The words weren't loud, but they traveled, sticky and poisonous. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now back to him. The elevator dinged softly. Doors slid open, golden light spilling from inside. He should have stepped in. Instead, the red blazer blocked the way, her stance wide like a gatekeeper clinging to borrowed power. "You don't belong here," she spat, shoving once more, harder. His shoes slid half an inch across polished stone, but he didn't stumble. His frame stayed rooted, anchored like a pillar. The only movement was the slow lift of his chin, eyes narrowing, not in rage, but in patience worn thin. The lobby itself seemed to breathe heavier. Marble walls echoed the scene back at everyone present. An intern clutched their tablet, unsure whether to step in or stay silent. A courier in the corner whispered into his phone, "You won't believe what I'm seeing." The woman's voice rose again, higher this time, jagged with certainty. "Leave this floor now or I'll have you removed." Removed. From the building he owned. From the elevator that bore his company's logo etched in steel. He didn't answer. Not yet. Silence wasn't weakness. Silence was stagecraft. And in that silence, the seeds of justice began to sprout. The man in black didn't flinch. He stood there in the center of the lobby, unmoving, unbothered to raise his voice while a storm of judgment swirled around him. His sweater was plain, his shoes clean but ordinary. No tie, no leather briefcase, no badge swinging from his chest. He looked like any visitor, like anyone but what he was. And that was intentional. This morning, he walked into the building with no entourage, no driver shadowing his steps, just him. He wanted to see how his people treated strangers when they thought no one important was watching. He wanted to test the air inside the very office he had built from scratch. The receptionist in red didn't know that. She only saw surface. She saw broad shoulders, dark skin, casual clothes. She saw what she wanted to see, someone who didn't belong. The marble floor under his shoes was the same marble he'd approved 3 years ago during renovations. The elevator she guarded so fiercely? He'd signed the purchase order for it, down to the brushed steel panels and gold-lit interior. The logo etched above the door, his logo rested there like a crown, invisible to everyone but him. Still, he said nothing, because silence wasn't emptiness. It was patience. It was a fuse waiting for fire. And in that quiet, memories bled through. He was 22 the first time it happened. Fresh out of grad school, portfolio clutched in his hand, he'd walked into an interview downtown. The guard at the lobby didn't even glance at his resume, just looked him up and down and said, "Deliveries are through the back entrance." He was 30 when it happened again. This time, he was a client. He had wired $500,000 into an account and showed up for a meeting. The banker smiled at the white man beside him, then turned to him with narrowed eyes. "Are you sure you're in the right office?" Now, at 41, it was happening here, in the very tower his company owned, the building that rose from his sweat and his sleepless nights. And still the words rang out the same, "You don't belong here." The crowd in the lobby shifted. A junior analyst near the desk whispered to a colleague, "Shouldn't we at least check his name?" But the office manager shot her a glare sharp enough to slice through curiosity. Order was restored on the surface. The man in black lowered his hands slowly, letting them rest by his sides. His breathing even, his expression unreadable. He didn't argue. He didn't plead. He simply stared at the open elevator, still glowing like an invitation denied. Because the test wasn't over yet. He had walked into this building like any ordinary man. But he wasn't ordinary. He was the weight behind every paycheck in this room. He was the name behind every contract signed upstairs. And in 20 minutes, everyone here would know it. The doors of the elevator stayed open, humming softly like a stage light waiting for the scene to unfold. But no one stepped in. The red blazer receptionist tightened her stance, lips curled into a thin line of authority she thought she had. "Sir," I said, "move." Her voice snapped again, sharper this time. She jabbed a finger toward the floor as if he were a child caught where he shouldn't be. Before he could answer, the office manager arrived, a man in a tailored gray suit, hair slicked back with more gel than confidence. He glanced once at the receptionist, then at the black man still standing calm. His verdict came fast, heavy, unearned. "What's going on here?" "This man tried to access the executive elevator without clearance," the receptionist declared, loud enough for half the lobby to hear. The manager didn't ask for ID, didn't ask for a name. He simply stepped closer, shoulders squared, tone dismissive. "All right, step aside. This elevator is not for visitors. You're holding up actual executives." Murmurs spread. A cluster of analysts near the coffee station exchanged looks. Someone whispered, "That's not how you handle a guest." Another whispered back, "He doesn't look like a guest." The man in black didn't respond. Not yet. His eyes stayed on the glowing interior of the elevator, the golden light flickering across his calm expression. The manager folded his arms. "Security's on the way. You can explain yourself to them. Until then, you're not standing here like you own the place." The irony cracked through the air like thunder no one laughed at. Behind the reception desk, a young intern shifted uncomfortably, fingers hovering near her phone. She muttered under her breath, "We didn't even check his badge." Her supervisor shot her a glare. Silence. A courier waiting near the mailroom door shook his head, pulling his phone from his pocket. He tapped record, whispering into the camera. "Downtown office tower." Black man pushed out of the elevator. "Staff calling security, this is bad." The crowd thickened. Shoes clicked against marble as workers lingered instead of walking past. Eyes flicked between the receptionist's rigid stance, the manager's smug posture, and the stillness of the man they were trying to erase. And then the words landed, deliberate, cruel. "You don't belong in this elevator," the manager said, chin lifted. "Frankly, you don't belong on this floor." The sentence stung more than a shove. It carried weight, not because it was true, but because it was said so easily, with the confidence of someone who had spoken it before. Still, the man in black didn't flinch. He let the words hang, heavy, choking the lobby's air. His silence wasn't weakness. It was a mirror, forcing them to hear their own arrogance echo back. The receptionist picked up the desk phone, dialing with sharp, staccato taps. "Security now. Unauthorized individual in the lobby." A hush swept the space. Even the fluorescent lights seemed to buzz quieter. The man in black remained steady, hands relaxed at his sides, as if the insults hadn't pierced him at all. But inside, he knew what was coming. He'd seen this scene before. He'd lived it. And this time, he was ready. The desk phone clicked back into its cradle. The word security lingered in the lobby like smoke. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. Then the crowd began to shift, slow, uneasy, drawn by the scent of conflict. The black man in the center didn't move. His posture was steady, shoulders square, arms loose at his sides, the kind of stillness that unsettles louder people. It wasn't defiance, it was composure. The receptionist's chest rose and fell quickly, as if she'd just won a small battle. The office manager straightened his tie, smirking at the silence. See? He knows he's caught. But silence wasn't surrender. Silence was power, and the man in black wielded it like a weapon no one else could see. Across the lobby, a young woman in business casual held her phone low, thumb hovering over the camera icon. She whispered to her friend, Should I film this? Her friend nodded, eyes wide. If you don't, no one will believe it. The record light blinked red. A new witness. A new thread of truth woven into the scene. The manager noticed. Put that phone away, he barked. The woman flinched but kept recording, lips pressed tight. Another voice joined from the back, softer but cutting through. Why not just check his ID? A middle-aged man in a blue shirt shook his head, baffled. You're escalating for no reason. The receptionist glared. Because he doesn't belong here. That's reason enough. Gasps fluttered. The words hit harder than she realized. They weren't about protocol anymore. They were about existence. The man in black didn't interrupt. He simply blinked slowly, his gaze shifting from one face to another. He had lived this script before. Every time, the same lines delivered by different actors. Every time, the same verdict handed down without a trial. He remembered standing in a hotel lobby at 29, credit card in hand, told the suite he reserved wasn't available the moment they saw his skin. He remembered the sting of sleeping in his car that night, turning humiliation into fuel. And now, here he was again, wealthy beyond measure, owner of the very floors above this lobby watching history try to repeat itself. The crowd thickened, shoes echoing against marble. A courier leaned against the wall, phone lifted higher. Downtown office tower, he whispered into his mic. Black man blocked from the elevator. They're calling security, this is happening. The air shifted. It wasn't just policy anymore, it was spectacle. The man in black finally moved, not a step, not a shove, just a breath, slow, deliberate. His eyes lifted to the ceiling as if weighing the patience it would take to endure a little longer. When he lowered his gaze again, it wasn't to the receptionist, not to the manager. It was to the intern still frozen behind the desk. Their eyes met, and she looked down, ashamed. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The silence itself said, "You see it. You know it. Say it." But she didn't, not yet. Fear pinned her voice to her throat. The manager folded his arms, declaring louder for the audience gathering, "Security will escort you out any moment now. Might as well save yourself the embarrassment and walk out on your own." A few chuckles echoed from the back. But just as quickly, a sharp voice cut through, "This is wrong. Everyone sees it." The crowd wasn't united, but cracks were forming. And the man in black, still rooted, still silent, letting their arrogance pile up like evidence in a courtroom that would soon turn against them. The lobby was no longer a quiet passageway. It had become an audience chamber, marble walls echoing every word. From the far side, a young man in a hoodie, just a delivery runner waiting for his pickup, raised his phone higher. The red light blinked. He whispered into the camera. They're blocking him from the elevator. He hasn't even said a word back. Look. His voice wasn't angry. It was stunned. The kind of disbelief that needs witnesses. The office manager noticed, his face hardening. "Stop recording. This is internal business." The courier didn't lower his phone. "If it was internal, you wouldn't be shouting it across the whole lobby," he said, louder this time. Heads turned. A ripple ran through the crowd. One woman in heels shook her head, whispering to her colleague, "They didn't even ask who he island." Another murmured back, "They don't care. They think they already know." The receptionist's jaw tightened. She gripped the desk edge like it was her last shield. "He's not staff. He doesn't belong in this elevator. That's all anyone needs to know." The words landed heavy, cold, and this time, they weren't met with silence. A junior analyst near the front, barely 24, badge still fresh, stepped forward. His voice wavered at first, but steadied under the weight of watching eyes. "With respect, you didn't even check his badge. You didn't verify anything. You just assumed." Gasps rippled. The crowd shifted again, as though the floor itself tilted. The manager barked back instantly, "Watch yourself. You want to keep your job?" But the analyst didn't back down. His eyes flicked toward the man in black, then back to the manager. "I want to keep my dignity." The room hushed. Phones tilted higher. The story was escaping the lobby, traveling beyond marble and glass. And still, the man in black said nothing. His silence held the shape of strategy. He stood as if the insults, the shouting, the threats of security were all being etched onto invisible stone. Evidence, not injury. The courier kept filming. He's not resisting. He's not even talking. They're the ones raising their voices. The receptionist slammed her palm on the desk. Enough! Security will deal with this. But her words quivered, and she knew it. Power was slipping, her certainty cracking like glass under too much weight. The man in black lifted his chin slightly, his gaze sweeping the crowd. Calm, steady, not pleading, not demanding, just letting silence draw out their conscience. And in that silence, voices grew. "This isn't right," said a woman near the elevators, her briefcase clutched tight. "Exactly," another man chimed in. "Why call security on someone just standing there?" The tension had shifted. No longer a one-sided confrontation. Now a scene with witnesses, voices, cameras, truth. The office manager sneered, desperate to regain control. "Don't get involved. He's trespassing." But the crowd wasn't so sure anymore. And for the first time since the shove, the balance of power began to tremble. The lobby's air felt charged now, as if every fluorescent light carried static. The crowd wasn't dispersing. They were leaning in, listening, waiting. The office manager adjusted his tie again, the gesture more nervous than polished. His voice cracked loud, meant for the whole room. "This man is wasting our time. He is not an executive. He's not even cleared for this floor." The receptionist nodded eagerly, arms folded, her red blazer blazing like a stop sign. "You heard the manager. Step away before this gets worse." The man in black didn't move. His eyes flicked once toward the open elevator doors, then back at the manager, calm, unshaken. But the manager wasn't calm. He stepped closer, pointing a finger just shy of the man's chest. "You don't belong here. Not in this lobby, not in this building. People like you come in pretending to be someone, wasting everyone's time, but not today." The words landed like a slap. "People like you." The phrase echoed against marble, bouncing into ears that couldn't unhear it. A murmur rolled through the crowd. Phones lifted higher. The courier's camera zoomed in, catching every syllable. The junior analyst who had spoken earlier shifted forward again, voice tight with anger. "You can't say that, that's not protocol." "Were." The manager spun toward him, eyes sharp. "You're out of line. Do you want to lose your job over this?" But the analyst didn't retreat. His jaw set, hands clenched. "Better to lose my job than my humanity." Gasps rippled again. The crowd was no longer neutral. The tension wasn't just between staff and the man in black. It was splitting the room itself. The receptionist, desperate to regain control, grabbed the desk phone again. "Security, hurry. This man is trespassing. He's a fraud. He's dangerous. Dangerous." The word hissed out like poison. Every eye in the lobby turned sharper, the stakes higher. Still, the man in black didn't react. His breathing stayed even, his stance rooted like stone. He wasn't silent because he had nothing to say. He was silent because their own words were burying them deeper. The manager sneered, gesturing toward the receptionist. "You hear that? Even she knows. This isn't your place. You think you can walk in here dressed like that and take the executive lift? Not on my watch." A woman near the coffee station shook her head, whispering to her friend, "He hasn't done a thing. He's just standing there." Her friend replied, "And they're panicking because of it." The receptionist's voice pitched higher, cracking with frustration. "Sir, this elevator is not for you. It never will be. Step aside before you embarrass yourself further." Wilbite, the man in black, finally shifted his weight, just slightly, tilting his head. Not a smile, not a glare, something quieter, something that unsettled the ones shouting. Because silence had turned into a mirror, and what the crowd saw in it wasn't him, it was themselves. The elevator doors slid shut with a soft chime, then opened again as if mocking the stalemate. Golden light spilled out, untouched. No one stepped forward. The office manager's patience snapped. He surged closer, the scent of cologne sharp in the air. His hand darted toward the man's chest. "Let me see your badge, if you even have one." Without waiting, he snatched the black lanyard hanging loosely from the man's neck. The crowd gasped. The badge clattered to the marble floor, plastic frame sliding across stone like evidence tossed aside. The man in black didn't reach down to recover it. He simply stood taller, eyes fixed on the manager's face. Calm, steady, unmoved. The receptionist in red, emboldened, stepped forward too. Her palm hit his shoulder in a hard shove, forcing him half a step back. "You're done here. I'll have the police remove you myself." The word police cracked through the lobby like thunder. Conversations halted. Phones froze in midair. The accusation was no longer about policy. It was about criminalizing presence. A middle-aged man near the seating area spoke up, voice trembling but clear. He hasn't broken a law. You can't just call the police because you don't like how he looks. The manager snapped back instantly. Stay out of this. He's trespassing. That's enough to detain him. The courier's voice carried from the back, louder now, camera still rolling. You ripped his badge off. That's assault. And you're still saying he doesn't belong? Everyone here can see it. The receptionist's face flushed, but her tone sharpened further. We know his type. Sneaks in, pretends to be staff, tries to access restricted floors. Not today. His type. The words rang louder than her shout. They echoed into the silence that followed, bouncing back with the sting of centuries. The man in black lowered his gaze briefly to the fallen badge, then raised it again without bending down. His silence was deliberate, his composure unnerving. He looked less like a man being accused, more like a judge letting the accusers reveal themselves. The young analyst behind the desk couldn't take it anymore. Her voice cracked, shaking with both fear and resolve. He didn't do anything wrong. His badge before you dropped it looked valid. I saw it flash green at the scanner. The manager spun on her, eyes blazing. Not another word. You're on thin ice already. But it was too late. The words had slipped out, and the crowd caught them. Murmurs spread fast. His badge was valid. She saw it. They ignored it. The receptionist slammed the phone down again, calling into the receiver with deliberate volume. Yes. Send security immediately. Possible impersonator. Potential threat. Repeat. Potential threat. Potential threat. The phrase turned the air metallic, heavy. It wasn't just dismissal anymore, it was escalation toward danger. And through it all, the man in black remained anchored to the marble, breathing even, expression unreadable. Not because he had nothing to say, but because every insult, every shove, every false accusation was another brick in the case he was silently building. The crowd no longer saw a man out of place. They saw a spectacle unraveling, dignity under attack, injustice recorded in real time. And though he hadn't spoken a word, his silence thundered louder than their shouting. The word threat still hung in the air, poisonous and heavy. The crowd felt it, the sting of it. Phones hovered higher, eyes widened. No one was leaving now. The man in black didn't reach for his fallen badge. Instead, he reached for something else. His hand slid into his pocket, deliberate, unhurried. He pulled out a sleek black phone, the screen glowing as if the device itself carried authority. No one spoke. Every eye locked on him. He tapped once, lifted it to his ear. His voice, when it came, was quiet, measured, calm. Activate protocol. 3 words. Simple. But the lobby's atmosphere shifted as if the floor itself tilted. On the other end, a voice answered immediately, crisp and efficient. Understood. Audit mode initiated. Do you want full escalation? He didn't glance at the manager still clutching his stolen badge, or at the receptionist standing guard like a sentry with trembling hands. His eyes remained on the open elevator, golden light waiting. Not yet, but log everything. Timestamp this moment. Logged, the voice replied. System is live. The crowd murmured. System? Protocol? The words didn't sound like a visitor bluffing. They sounded like a commander speaking into the airwaves of a hidden army. The courier whispered into his stream. He's not panicking. He just activated something. Did you hear that? Thousands of viewers were already flooding his chat. The manager scoffed, trying to regain ground. He waved the badge in the air. What protocol? You think calling a friend proves anything? You're done here. But his words rang hollow. He was shouting. The man in black was not, and that contrast was louder than volume. The receptionist pressed the desk phone to her chest, whispering into the receiver, Security! Hurry! He's calling people. He's trying something. The man in black lowered his phone, eyes scanning the room once more. Calm. Steady. His silence returned, but this time, it carried weight like a fuse already lit. The young analyst behind the desk stared at him, something clicking in her expression. She whispered to the colleague beside her, That wasn't a bluff. Did you hear the tone? He's in control. Her colleague swallowed, whispering back, Then why are they treating him like he's nothing? Because that was the pattern. It had always been the pattern. At 26, he'd been shoved out of a private bank lobby after showing ID, told to come back with the account holder. At 34, he was blocked from a gala dinner he sponsored. Security insisting the guest list didn't include people like him. Every time, the same script. Every time, silence mistaken for submission. But not this time. The phone in his hand buzzed again, the voice on the line. Sir, audit is live. All building systems synced. Ready for your next instruction. The man in black's gaze lingered on the manager, still clutching his badge like a stolen prize. His answer was low, steady. Stand by. 2 words. But they landed heavier than the manager's shouting, heavier than the receptionist's panic. The crowd felt it, the shift, the invisible weight of power beginning to turn. And the ones who had mocked, shoved, and threatened him, they didn't realize yet, but they were already losing. The lobby buzzed with a nervous hum, like wires straining under too much current. Everyone had seen it, the phone call, the unshaken calm, the strange authority in his voice. But still, the manager clung to the badge in his fist, holding it high as if it were a trophy. See this? He barked, his voice cracking. This proves nothing. Just another fraud trying to sneak upstairs. People like you always think you can fake your way in. Those words, people like you, hung heavy. Some in the crowd looked down, ashamed. Others lifted their phones higher. The man in black finally moved, 1 step forward, slow, deliberate, the kind of step that shifts gravity. He looked at the badge, then at the trembling receptionist, then directly at the manager. His voice came steady, low, but every syllable cut like glass. You just shoved the CEO of this company out of his own elevator. The room cracked open, gasps rushed across the lobby like a wave. The courier whispered hoarsely into his mic, "Did you hear that? He's the CEO." His live stream exploded with comments. The manager blinked, color draining from his face. The badge slipped slightly in his hand. That's not possible, you're lying." But the silence that followed betrayed him. No one in the crowd laughed. No one dismissed it. They had felt the shift already, long before he spoke the words. The young analyst behind the desk whispered, loud enough for nearby ears to catch, I told you he wasn't bluffing." The receptionist stumbled back a step, her blazer no longer a shield but a warning flag. You don't look like—" She stopped herself, the words dying in her throat. The man in black took another step forward. His presence filled the space, not loud, not angry, just undeniable. His eyes swept the crowd once, then fixed on the manager again. "You called me a fraud in the building I built. You ripped my badge from my neck, in the lobby I designed. You tried to erase me on the floor that exists because of me." Phones shook as people tried to hold them steady. No one dared to interrupt. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His presence was enough. And in that moment, the truth landed harder than any shove. The CEO had spoken. And everything had changed. The words CEO of this company still rang through the lobby like a verdict. Silence pressed against the glass walls, heavy and unrelenting. And then came the fallout. The manager's face drained of color. His fingers fumbled around the badge he'd ripped away only minutes earlier, now trembling in his grip as though it burned him. His mouth opened, but no words came, just a stuttered gasp, the collapse of authority. The receptionist backed into the desk, clutching the edge for balance. Her red blazer, once armor, now looked like a warning flare. I didn't know," she whispered, but her voice was too thin, too late. Across the lobby, the analyst who had defended him seconds earlier pressed a hand to her mouth, equal parts vindicated and horrified. She turned to her colleague. He told them, and they still— She didn't finish. Everyone knew the rest. The courier, phone raised high, didn't whisper this time. He shouted to his live stream, "You're watching history." They shoved their CEO out of his own elevator. This is corporate racism on tape. His chat exploded, comments flashing so fast they blurred. Gasps rippled, then murmurs, then voices. A woman near the seating area said, "That's him. I saw the Forbes article last year." A young man with a laptop muttered, "I can't believe I just witnessed this, in real time." And then, from somewhere in the crowd, the sound began. One pair of hands clapping. Slow, defiant, it echoed in the marble chamber. Others joined. A second, a third. Then a wave of applause rolled through the lobby, not polite, but fierce. Applause that wasn't for a reveal of wealth, but for dignity unshaken. The manager's eyes darted wildly, searching for support, but found none. Even his junior staff lowered their gazes, shame heavy in their throats. The receptionist whispered into the phone again, desperate, "Cancel security. Cancel." but her voice broke mid-sentence. One client stood, raising his voice over the applause. "I've had accounts here for 20 years. If this is how you treat the man who built this building, imagine how you treat the rest of us. I'm closing everything today." The weight of those words cracked louder than the clapping. The manager staggered back, his authority dissolving in front of cameras and witnesses. He knew, in that instant, his career wasn't just ending, it was being broadcast. And in the center of it all stood the CEO, calm, steady, unshaken. He hadn't moved more than a few steps, yet the entire room had shifted around him. They had tried to erase him. Now they were erasing themselves. The applause still echoed when the CEO finally lifted his phone again. Calm, precise, his voice cut through the noise like a gavel. "Terminate the office manager. Suspend the receptionist. Effective immediately." On the other end, his assistant's reply came crisp, audible through the speaker. "Orders logged. Credentials revoked." Now, almost instantly, the manager's access badge buzzed red in his palm. The screen at the reception desk flashed "access denied." His authority collapsed with a single beep. He stared at it, disbelief twisting into panic. Wait, there must be a mistake. But even as he spoke, the receptionist's own badge glowed red. She dropped it on the desk as though it had burned her fingers. Gasps surged through the crowd. Phones tilted closer, capturing every second. The courier narrated breathlessly into his live stream. "You're watching this live, he just fired them. Their badges are dead. They're out." The receptionist's lips trembled. "Please, I didn't know. I was just following." The CEO's gaze didn't soften. His voice remained level, almost gentle, but immovable. "You didn't need to know my title to know how to treat me. Respect is not optional." The manager stumbled forward, desperate. "I've given years to this office." "You can't." The CEO's eyes sharpened. Years of what? Years of arrogance? Years of telling people where they don't belong? Those years end today? A hush swept across the lobby. The authority they once wielded so loudly now evaporated in silence. The junior analyst behind the desk straightened, courage returning. She whispered, but her voice carried, "Justice. That's what this island." The CEO tapped his phone once more. Audit complete. Lock them out of the system. All devices, all accounts. Tell. The screen at the reception desk flickered, then went dark. Their names vanished from the employee registry before the crowd's eyes. The manager's face crumpled. The receptionist covered her mouth, pale as stone. And in the center, the CEO remained calm. No gloating, no shouting. Just the quiet finality of power exercised with precision. Justice. Delivered on the marble floor where injustice began. The lobby was silent now. The red badges on the marble floor told the story better than words ever could. Authority revoked. Masks stripped away. The CEO stepped toward the elevator at last. Each footfall echoed sharp and measured, cutting through the stunned air. The crowd parted for him instinctively, not out of fear, but respect. Phones lowered, conversation hushed. At the doors, he turned. His eyes swept the lobby one final time over the junior staff who had found their courage, over the guests who had raised their voices, over the two former employees now frozen in disbelief. He spoke not to them, but to the room itself. "You thought my silence meant weakness, but silence is power, and today it spoke louder than your shouting." The words landed heavy, yet calm, like a closing statement that needed no rebuttal. He glanced once toward the courier still holding his phone, live stream blinking. "You don't need to keep recording," the CEO said evenly. "This moment is already permanent, not because of the video, but because of what it revealed." The courier lowered his phone slowly, trembling, realizing the truth. The CEO continued, his voice steady, unshaken. "Respect is not something you check at a scanner. Dignity is not optional, and anyone who forgets that loses everything." Just a ripple of nods swept through the crowd. Some clapped again, softer this time. Others simply stood still, moved in a way applause couldn't express. The elevator chimed. Its doors slid open, gold light spilling across the marble floor. The CEO stepped inside. For the first time all day, the space felt like it belonged to him again. Just before the doors closed, he delivered the final line low, deliberate, unforgettable. "I don't need to prove where I belong. I built it." Paulo. The doors sealed shut. The lobby remained frozen, the echo of his words lingering longer than the applause. And in that silence, everyone understood. Justice had spoken not through noise, not through fury, but through calm, undeniable power.